Welcome everybody to the Pajunk sponsored symposium on NRFit, a new era in patient safety. We look forward to reports from Belgium, Germany, and then from the UK in the next 45 minutes. What we'll do is we'll leave questions to the end, so please get those questions coming in and we'll get them to be answered at the end. I'll introduce Dr. Zanner for you, Robert Zanner from München in Germany. He will discuss with us the transition from LUER to NRFit and the practical experience at a German university hospital. Dr. Zanner has been an anaesthetist in München since 2017, and we look forward to his talk.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Dr. Hillermann. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. So before I go into detail about the transition that we made from LUER to NRFit, just let me give you some facts about our hospital and the infrastructure there. So we have been around for quite some time. The hospital has been founded in 1834 as an institution for the poor and the ill. It's been growing ever since, and in 1967 became university hospital since there were so many medical students in Munich that a second medical school was instituted. Today we have almost 1,200 beds, and you can find all surgical and medical specialties with the exception of cardiac surgery at our hospital. Our department is the biggest in the whole hospital. We have about 180 anesthetists, which perform more than 40,000 anesthetic procedures each year. We have a large proportion of peripheral regional anesthesia, especially in trauma surgery and affiliated subspecialties and vascular surgery, as well as a high proportion of central regional anesthesia for major tumor surgery and as well as for labor. We also provide 24 hours, 7 days a week post-op pain service. Now, this is our hospital campus. Since we are very old, we have the problem that we have spread the buildings all over the place. We used to have operating theaters all over the place with their own infrastructures. But during the last 15 to 20 years, we did huge efforts to centralize this, to make supply easier. And today we have 3 main operating theaters, which you can see in orange. And just next to one of the operating theaters, we have the Department of Obstetrics. Now, when it comes to supply of medical material, our hospital has one big central warehouse where all the materials are stored in large quantities. Materials for the operating theater are then transferred to 2 storage locations, which are located just 1 floor underneath the ORs. And from there, the material comes to the induction rooms of our ORs, where they are stored in cabinets. All the different products are marked with badges. They have a barcode with them, and 3 times a day we have service assistants who go through all these cabinets, scan materials that have to be replaced, and then they come with a card and replace it. So now, the first contact that we have with NRFit was in the end of 2018, when our Pajunk sales rep told us about the availability of NRFit products from Pajunk. And we discussed a little bit, we got into detail with NRFit, and since it is a European Union directive, we thought NRFit will be mandatory at some time. And it would be a good thing to transition as soon as possible so that we don't have the problem to get in a hustle when everybody has to change the materials, and probably there will be a shortage of NRFit products available. So we started planning pretty soon, just after the Christmas holidays in 2019. We set up a project group. It consisted of 2 members of our purchase department, a member of the anesthesia nursing staff and anesthetist, which was me. And we were always supported by our Pajunk sales rep, who had already experience with transition to NRFit from an Austrian hospital. So we got some input there, which was very helpful in the planning phase. And so we always had close contact. We thought about what was the time we needed to transit. And we thought it should be around 4 months. So all the suppliers should have the materials then. And we looked for a perfect time point in these 4 months. And we found the Easter holidays. And I will tell you in a minute why these Easter holidays were so perfect for us. So in the first step, we identified all of the relevant products via database search, and we found all our regional anesthesia products, the sets for peripheral and central regional anesthesia. Usually when we place catheters, we have a kind of modular system. We have a sterile base set, which has all the necessary materials for local anesthesia of the skin, sterile drapes, sterile ultrasound covers, sterile swabs. And then on top, we just put the next set, central venous catheter set, or in this case, the epidural catheter set. So the only thing that is missing that you have to put on top is material for fixation. Then we had the materials we needed for our PCA pumps, and of course all the consumables, syringes, caps, tubings, whatever. We also found products that were not in use by anesthesia, but by neurologists. The materials they use for lumbar puncture, which were Sprotte needles, which were much larger than ours. And we also found materials for external ventricular drainage, which was used by our neurosurgeons. So in the next step, we checked the availability of NRFit alternatives for these products. And it was no problem for our regional sets because also the LUER sets that came from Pajunk, and so they knew what we have and they knew how much we needed, the quantities, and so this was done with a phone call. The PCA equipment came from a different supplier, and they were also in building up the stocks of NRFit equipment, and told us that okay, 3 to 4 months should be enough time so they could equip us with all the necessary materials. Our supplier of consumables was totally surprised by our request for NRFit products, and they said they needed at least half a year to have the products in quantities that were enough. So we decided not to postpone the transition, but get the consumables from Pajunk in the meantime. Then the neurologists did not change the NRFit. They don't inject anything. They just drain the cerebrospinal fluid. And for the neurosurgeons, we tried to get NRFit material for extraventricular drainage, but there was nothing available at that time. So after that, we got some test samples, evaluated them, looked how the handling was. Everything was a little bit different, but not too much, so everything was fine. And then we were ready to go. We started our information campaign. This means the warehouse personnel was informed through our purchasing department that there will be a change. When and how in detail, I will tell you later. Or our anesthetists and the internists and all the nursing staff, they got lectures about NRFit. We had some posters that we can put into the ICUs and the ORs with information about NRFit. And we also had an online training platform provided by Pajunk, which we could adjust to our needed, and everybody could go through that. And of course, we had to inform the staff from the labor room. Usually the midwives prepare all the catheters for us. So of course they need the information that something is changing and when. So when we were set to go, the Easter holidays came, and we thought the holidays would be a very good time point because we have 4 days with no regular program in the OR. So we could use our LUER products until the holidays and then switch to NRFit. And hopefully over the holidays, all the catheters with the LUER system would be removed, and we could stick with NRFit. So we used it until Thursday, and after Thursday, we started to use only NRFit products. In our main storage, we had then an NRFit products in storage already 1 or 2 weeks before the transition, but we also kept the LUER products just in case something happened. Well, in the OR storages, we also switched on Thursday because we still had the cabinets in the ORs full with LUER products, so we didn't have to store them that much, but kept a little bit as a reserve. And in our cabinets and the ORs, we switched on Friday. So what happened during the transition? We didn't encounter any major problems. We had our purchase department on call. Our Pajunk sales rep was on call over the holidays, just in case anything happened. We briefed all the personnel on call over the holidays, but no major problems happened. And during the first week, we found out that we didn't inform everybody. So some of our colleagues were on holiday, on rotation somewhere else, or pregnant, or so we had to do some more information. We also found out that our infusion pumps, which we use in the PACU for the epidural catheters, couldn't work with the NRFit syringes because they were programmed only for one supplier, so we had to change this. And the supply of our PCA pump tubing was not sufficient, so we had a short period of about 1 week where we had to go back to LUER, and but this resolved very quickly. And with just after months, everything was running stable. We found out that we forgot something. And that was when we had to do the first epidural blood patch, which is not that often. And we usually use a LUER syringe and needle, and this doesn't fit, of course, to the NRFit epidural system. And so we had to look for something to solve this problem. We didn't want an adapter solution because that counteracts the idea of NRFit. And what we found was a butterfly with an NRFit connector to draw the blood, and everything is fine right now. So when I come to my end, as a conclusion, the proper planning really reduces the stress level, and it's very, very helpful if you have input from others who have already done the transition, because they can give you tips so you don't have to make mistakes that they made. And it is very important that you know your local circumstances, because every hospital is different, supplies are different, and this is something you have to take into account. And you always have to be prepared that you forgot something and have to have a plan B. So at the end, I would like just to thank our team, our project team, Svetlana Springer and Sandra Baumann from the purchase department, Steve Bachwitz from the nursing staff, and of course Thomas Wilhelm from Pajunk, who helped us a lot in the transition. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm waiting for the question at the end, but you can also email me if you have any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zanner. And welcome, Dr. Pandin, and thank you, Dr. Pandin, for joining us this morning. Dr. Pandin will be doing the next presentation of experiences in Belgium. on the NRFit. He's an anaesthetist at Belgium, at a big university hospital in Brussels, the Erasmus Hospital, and he comes with experience of more than 30 years in regional anesthesia. And we look forward to his presentation on conversion to NRFit. Welcome, Dr. Pandin.
So, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you to have given me the opportunity to talk about our short experience, because we are, the difference of the two other speakers, we are only ready to start the adventure or in the experience of the NRFit. This is my disclosures. We can see the presentation. Oh, it's okay. So now we are ready. We are ready for the NRFit, and I will try to explain and to present our very recent experience. This is my disclosures, and why to switch to NRFit. And I think that it has been discussed by the previous speaker. I think that the first is the motivation to provide to our patient the safety first, and the safety first in the recommendation of the local and the national different country recommendation. For instance, in Belgium there is a specific recommendation, and so we have tried to follow it, corresponding to the brilliance of the NRFit ISO norm. Okay, so why do that? It is simply because the main arguments are in the literature. Why? Because in this very recent end of 2020, published in the Regional Anesthesia and Pain Medicine, this QZ have made the report of 20 years of activity across the Europe, and the different reports all in the literature. And we have reported 21 cases of deaths and 8 severe outcomes, mainly for the three bigger bar are the central techniques in comparison to peripheral nerve block. But for peripheral nerve block, there is also complication. And a very recent paper in the Journal of Neurosurgical Anesthesia, I report one case of propofol induction in a lumbar drain, not for regional anesthesia, but for neurosurgical indication. And this case is also illustrative of different field of problem about the misconnection and the misinjections. And following the publication of this case, there is published a very interesting response and exchange about the appliance of the recommendation of the famous NRFit norm in our practice. This is a timeline. This is my timeline of my experience. On the bottom, I have illustrated the different step of the evolution of the ISO norm, the NRFit ISO norm, from 2010 to today, with a progressive and very variable appliance in the Europe and North America. And this is our experience. Our experience started in 2013 with the first national and local information. We have had in 2016 informal discussion. We have made an extensive review of the market, including American companies regarding the different materials. Last year, we have applied an administrative agreement final plan to have the opportunity to introduce all the materials. And the date of the go live will be for us in 2021, probably the next month. So how to do that? This is what we have done in my hospital. We have applied a 6-step equipment plan with first the definition of the equipment specification. And in my hospital, we have not limited this transition to the central block, but we have extended to all the techniques of regional anesthesia. I will show you that on my next slide. Second level of the second step, we have a review the computing equipments, and in our experience, we have reviewed I think, 9 providers, and we have examined the different material and the different application of the NRFit. And I have to say that the level of application of the norm is very variable from provider to provider. It has taken 6 months. After, when we have decided and we have selected the equipment provider, the equipment manufacturer, we have defined with this manufacturer the pragmatic shock building plan. This is a definition of what we need and the amount of pieces we need to have a fluid use of the different pieces in the different theaters of the hospital. Fourth, we have progressively using different learning material and pedagogical material. We have introduced to the user the new materials with explanation, with workshops to make the future user able to do without problem. After that, and now during 1 or 2 months, we are considering the deployment of equipment on a fixed date, and I think that we will similarly to the previous speaker, we have selected 1 weekend. So before the weekend, we will use the non-NRFit system, and after the weekend, during the weekend, we change the equipment, and after the weekend, the users have to use the NRFit systems. But it is for our next future. I have no experience for now, and I think that we need to have a monitoring plan for the new materials, first monthly and after yearly, to be sure that everything is working without problem. This is the extent of the field of application in our hospital. We have decided to switch the non-NRFit to the NRFit in the whole field of application in adult and pediatric patients, regarding, of course, all the central anesthetic techniques as epidural catheter, spinal catheter, covering also the peripheral techniques, the wound infiltrations, the elastomeric, and all the connection with the electronic pumps and all the accessories. And we are considering for the next future the possibly a secondary extension to the algology, but not for now. So for that, we have replaced in our catalog, in our medical magazine catalog, we have replaced 32 non-NRFit items by 47 NRFit items. This difference of 15 pieces is corresponding to the creation of items about and regarding all the syringes and the small accessories, because I think that the secret and the success are in the details, and the details are not the pieces, the needles or the sets, but the accessories to make the transition successful. Corresponding to this plan and to this procedure, we have decided to select 1 single supplier to streamline and to cover the whole equipment plant. And regarding the market, I repeat, we have examined, I think, 9 to 10 providers. Pajunk was able to cover the whole equipment plant, and unfortunately, all the other competitive provider was not able, and was able only to cover between 50 to 85% of our whole equipment. It is the reason why we have decided to work with Pajunk. Before, with non-NRFit, we worked with 1/3 Pajunk, 1/3 Vibram, and 1/3 Huygens, and now we have decided to switch to 1 supplier to have a more comprehensive appliance of the NRFit system. Okay. This is my conclusion, because I will try to be short and possible. Never forget your future is created by what you do today, and then I can encourage you to go for it, because it's not very complex to apply. There is a lot of things and a lot of documents to help you to put in application your plan, and so I wish you a good luck in your project. Thank you very much. This is my email address in case of. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pandin. Okay, so welcome everyone. Again, I'm working in the University Hospitals Coventry and Warwickshire. In Coventry, it's also a big university hospital with about 1,300 beds. And as a matter of interest, Coventry is the City of Culture of the UK in 2021. So our journey has been slightly different to the other two speakers, because in 2018, in June, we had a NEVER event, which is a term there's some NEVER events in the UK, which is the wrong route drug administration. And this happened in our obstetrics unit, and at the same time in 2017, there was a national patient safety alert recommending conversions from LUER connectors to NRFit connectors. So those two together, and the investigation into the NEVER event came out with some recommendations, and that recommendation was to convert all our equipment that we use for regional anesthesia to NRFit. So that was the sort of the main driver for change. At that stage in 2018, this was in June, the equipment was, the spinal needles were there, but other equipment, epidurals, continuous nerve catheters, there were some supply issues, not from the needle supplies, but more from the infusion device supplies. And so our conversion was not a single conversion. It was more a measured approach through the years, and I'll go through that. And so initially we identified all the areas in the hospital similar to what they've done for regional needles, and we identified areas that use spinal needles, for example, hematology, radiology, the surgeons use them, and so on. So the key was to change all of those, and we did have some barriers for this change. A lot of individuals, especially non-anaesthetists, very reluctant to change because of individual needle preferences. So we had quite a few road shows in those areas where the Pajunk UK team came with us to reassure the people that the needle itself hasn't changed, because there's a lot of change fatigue in our hospital because there's constant change. But they were wary that the quality would go down. But just to reassure them that the quality didn't. The big other thing that stopped us from converting all at the time was infusion device unavailability. So what we then did is we had a whole coalition of helpers. So we had groups from acute medicine, neurology, hematology, and we got them on board to get them to move to the to the NRFit, and the main sort of things that helped us to move over was to get the different teams on board. But in theatres itself, I think converting the spinals, using spinal packs where all the equipment is in there already really helped. So we didn't have to look around for different equipment, and people felt more secure with the change when everything was there. We also got some new regional anesthesia trolley because there was a concern raised by our department that different types of syringes, I know the color is yellow, but that would cause a lot of confusion, and storage in our anesthetic rooms could become problematic with all different types of syringes, because basically the duplication of the LUER and non-LUER syringes. So we got these regional anesthesia trolleys where all our regional anesthetic gets kept, and that really made a big difference. We also, in the initial period, had daily implementation debriefs, and really couldn't have done it without medical stores and the Pajunk team who were on site when we did the road shows and also the initial conversion to NRFit. So I'll show you a timeline, and it's a rather protracted timeline. As you can see, it starts with a critical incident in June 2018. The report came out in July 2018, and then the spinal needle was introduced in October. So that was quite a rapid changeover. And then we introduced the single-shot peripheral regional anesthesia needles in 2019. However, you can see there was 2 failed attempts to introduce the epidural needles because our epidural supply at the time, and especially the infusion pumps that we use, they didn't have the products, and we had multiple times where they said that they would have the equipment ready, but they didn't. And it was only when we had another critical incident, this time wrong drug administration, again in obstetrics, 2 years later, that we were able to put some pressure on our supplier of the NRFit to convert the infusion devices to NRFit. So we managed that last October. And then we use elastomeric pumps for our continuous nerve catheters, and those supplies still haven't converted, so we're still awaiting to do that. But in the meantime, we're going to change to a different pump. So as you can see, a protracted timeline. However, even though the timeline was protracted, I think a lot of things went well with the conversion. There was no serious untoward incidents which we monitored with during the implementation period and following the implementation period. I think communication, as has been noticed to all hospital staff, is key, and in a way it was also an advertisement for regional anesthesia, because we got those trolleys in, but also for the rest of the hospital suddenly, because they noticed that regional what's happening to regional anesthetics, it was really improved the sort of level of what we can do as anaesthetists. What could we have done better? I think the time frame definitely was a problem in that it just kept going on with the infusion devices or the giving sets. And I would say I wouldn't, if I had to do this again, I wouldn't wait for a critical incident to happen. I would definitely try and do it before and convert the equipment itself. It's all very good, and once you've got all the equipment, there's no looking back from changing. And we never once had any equipment shortages once we implemented it, and the availability has always been there. And I would like to thank our Pajunk team in the UK for all the support they gave us during this transition time. So that's just a short version of our trust, and I'll just unshare again some questions. And this is probably a question to the panel, to all of the panel members. With your conversion to the infusions, did you encounter any problems? It's probably more to Zanner, because he's done it with infusion devices for continuous regional anesthesia.
So I guess the question goes for technical problems. So the only problem we had were the incompatibility of the syringes in the beginning, which was just a programming issue. But now everything's running smoothly.
Mm-hmm. And have you and your continuous nerve catheters? What equipment do you use for that, for your infusion devices?
We used normal infusion pumps, so they are set to a definite rate, and no PCA at that time.
Okay. And Dr. Pandin, any issues with the infusion devices there? Because especially our epidural pumps, there was a problem with those. I won't mention the supplier, but there was a definite issue with those. Have you had any problems in Belgium? Encountered any problems there?
We have at your difference. I think it's interesting to confront our experience and our approach and our preparing phase approach. I think it's interesting because in our case we have taken a long time to examine and to do for each technique. We have individualized each technique, and we have defined a sort of way or a practical way from the basket in the store to the patient and to the post-operative period. And each time we have isolated or we have individualized different points, insertion of the catheter, insertion of the system, padding of the system, attachment of the system, etc., in all the details. And so at a moment, very rapidly, we have, of course, similar for you, to individualize the problem of the connection to the post-operative infusion systems. So we have had two options. First, to use, as you are doing, classical pumps with syringe, but Pajunk has developed a system of connection which make able the possibility to connect NRFit system to non-NRFit pump at the moment, because our plan is to replace our park of non-NRFit PCA pump by NRFit PCA pump, but you know that it is expensive, and we have calculated we are needing a 2 years period to switch all our pumps. So for now we are working with this connector, which is developed by Pajunk. And last month our provider of our pumps has proposed. So I think that there is evolution every month. They have been proposed a completely compatible NRFit system, but attachable to the non-NRFit pump. So we can use our pump. It has been developed very recently. It has been proposed on the market this month. We can have a non-NRFit PCA pump with a Baxter attached to the pump, and using a tubing we can reconnect it to the pump. So I think that we are going to use this pump, this device, until the moment, probably around July, we are going to launch the next step of a replacement of the pumps to have a definitely completely setting NRFit compatible setting.
Okay, then thank you. Because there's a few questions on this on different suppliers like the Smiths pump, the CAD pump.
Yes. I think is a key point.
Yeah, I think because we use the Smiths pump and they were very slow in bringing out the equipment, and they did offer us also the connector, but we also stayed clear from the connector because, as Dr. Zanner said, that sort of goes against the whole thing of converting to NRFit. Yeah. There's another question here about the cost of the equipment. Now, I can speak from my own experience that the cost wasn't increased. Pajunk gave us the promise that the equipment would be exactly the same, and I can see some nodding heads, and I think that probably answers the question, and that there were and are no cost implications for the individual equipment itself when it comes to that. And then another question here: is there any issues with problems with misconnections at all? Could sort of incidents where the syringe wasn't available or anything like that? Probably more Dr. Zanner, because you've done the conversion.
No, we didn't have any critical incidents.
Okay. Okay, and there's a question here on the LUER connectors, and I think the view of the panel is probably that if you can avoid it, we should avoid it. I know in the UK there were some hospitals which used the surety system, which was a system that was introduced pre-NRFit, and they were sort of had to change over because surety wasn't being supplied anymore. So there were hospitals where they used the connectors, but they needed special they had a special SOP to deal with the connector itself. And I think if you can get all the equipment, it's probably best to stay clear of those connectors, because once those connectors are in circulation in the hospital, they can potentially pose a problem. Then another question here is what about the other areas that use spinal needles, for example, hematology? Dr. Zanner, did you change those too?
No, we didn't, but our database search just gave us the neurologists for other users of spinal needles. Mm-hmm. And there we didn't change. They didn't want to change because they said we do not inject anything, though there can't be a critical incident, and therefore they didn't change.
Okay. Yeah, in our hospital we did change them all, because some of the neurologists wanted some pressure monitoring devices to measure the spinal pressures or the CSF pressures, and they did, and manometer lines for those are available, so we can convert them all. With us, the hematologists, they do inject different cancer drugs, and those are also all converted to NRFit, and the pharmacy itself supplies the NRFit needle with the drug already in place. Any other comments from the panel, because those are sort of the main questions. Any comments? I think we've got about a minute. Would you say, Dr. Zanner, it's definitely the way to go?
Yes, of course, because it is safe, and of course, with everything that is new, you have to convince your staff that it is better than the old stuff. And one thing that I see even after 2 years, the loss of resistance syringe from the epidural catheter set, it looks a lot like a LUER lock syringe, and although it is a slip syringe, most of my colleagues use it and they try to turn it on the epidural needle. So something you just can't get out. But we are very happy with the transition. And we haven't had any issues with shortage of supply, and so now it is really standard in our house.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Dr. Pandin, your transition is in the beginning of April or in April.
It isn't due. It is for the next month. But I think that I wish to be similar to my colleague from München. But I think that at the beginning of the story, I was a little bit doubtful about the possibility and the different problems. But I think that with a serious plan and a serious anticipation, depending of the ways you follow. For you in UK, you have decided to use a progressive step-by-step, field by field. But I think that is not very, very complex, and I think that we must do, because I have one experience of misconnection and misinjection, and believe me, it's not personal, but in my department, and I think that is the big issue. So we have to, and because we have this material, everything is quite ready. So
okay,
we have to encourage people to change.
Yeah. I think our time's nearly up. There's one last question about combined spinal epidural kit. Do either of you use combined spinal epidurals?
Yeah, it's existing.
Yeah,
it's existing. I'm singing and I have tested it. It's working very well.
Yeah, there is. We've got the same issue. We do have spinal epidural kit, and it does work. And I don't think there's a question about the type of equipment. And I think most of the equipment, what has been done is that the equipment itself stays the same. It's just the needle hub that it's different, and the needle hub and the syringe that have changed. The integrity of the needle and so on is all the same, and also the appearance of CSF coming out of the spinal needle. I think there's a lot of anxiety before you implement it, but once it's implemented, I think there's no issue.
I have one comment, if I can.
Yep.
There is so the NRFit is two aspects: the connection and the color code. Yeah. Because I think that people must be aware that some providers are proposing only connection and no color code. So you have normal syringe with normal similar aspect with only a connector. So I think that in the variants of an NRFit plane, you have to have the two aspects: first the connection, and second the color code. Because on your market you could find some pieces probably cheaper, but without the color code. So I think it's very important.
Indeed, definitely. I think that's definitely correct. I think both aspects need to be changed there, and I think that's probably it. I'd like to thank both my fellow speakers, Dr. Zanner and Dr. Pandin from München and Brussels, for joining us on this. The experiences of conversion to Pajunk, conversion to NRFit, and I'd like to also thank Pajunk for giving us the opportunity and for all their support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good Saturday and good Congress.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.